But first, I've been critical of the Prime Minister, for caving in on global warming, letting the ABC run riot. But today, got to ask, what is wrong with his critics here? People in Labor, in the media. What is this cultural cringe that says if some foreign leader smears our Prime Minister, then our Prime Minister must be wrong? France's President Emmanuel Macron today called Morrison a liar. He wandered over to a pack of Australian journalists in Rome for the G20 meeting and said that Morrison had lied about a submarine project with France before Morrison then tore it up and went for a nuclear sub instead.
I have a lot of respect for your country. I have a lot of respect and a lot of friendship for your people. I just say when we have respect, you have to be two and you have to behave in line and consistently with this value.
Do you think he lied to you?
I don't think. I know.
It was a real friendly little chat between Macron and the Australian press pack, but note a couple of things. First, Macron's abuse of an ally like that, that's just disgraceful. Does he talk to the Chinese dictator like that? More importantly, at no stage has Macron ever shown how Morrison did lie. It's an accusation totally without proof. But to our media, the accusation was enough to treat Morrison like the guilty man. So Watchers journalists then badgered him with all the scepticism that some of them never showed in their cosy little chat with Macron. Because Macron, is French.
President Macron told a couple of us around the corner that you didn't tell him the truth on the subs deal. In fact, he said that you might have lied. Is that true?
No.
He said that what happened was detrimental to your reputation. What do you say to that?
I'll always stand up for Australia's interests.
What are you going to do to repair the relationship? Because he said he was pretty clear that you need to do something to repair the relationship.
Well, we've done that process.
He obviously doesn't feel that way.
Well, there'll be some time, I think, to go down this process, but we've begun it. We've spoken several times over the last couple of days. I'm sure we'll speak a bit more before I head back to Australia. But let me be very clear. The decision I've taken as Prime Minister, that my government has taken, was in Australia's national interest. I don't resolve for it for 1 second. These decisions are difficult. Of course, it has caused disappointment and it has caused an impact on the relationship with France.
Morrison sounded a bit weak there. I would have gone for Macron's throat myself. But he is clear about this, that he had warned Macron that the French subs deal was not in our national interest, and under our contract with France, Australia had a right to walk away.
I explained very clearly that the conventional submarine option was not going to meet Australia's interests.
And I think Morrison's team knew they had to do better, because late this afternoon, a leak to the Daily Telegraph. Macron did know damn well that his subs deal was in strife before Morrison ripped it up. You see, a couple of days earlier, Macron texted Morrison asking, should I expect good news or bad news for our joint submarine ambitions? And I'd go further. You could argue it was the French who lied to us. Remember them promising to build these subs entirely in Australia, and somehow more and more of the work was going to France. But whatever. The French president smears our Prime Minister with an unproven allegation, one that's denied, but what do you know? Labor politicians here say, oh, case closed, it's Morrison who's the liar.
President Macron has made clear that Mr. Morrison lied to him.
If world leaders can't trust Scott Morrison, neither can the Australian people. Excuse me?
So if one world leader doesn't trust Morrison, then the Australian voters shouldn't either? Is that a Labor rule? So if China's dictator, for instance, he doesn't trust Morrison, or Vladimir Putin, he doesn't trust Morrison, neither should we? What kind of cultural cringe is that? You know, people on the side of every country but their own. Now, some people are saying, oh, but wait, the US president himself said that Morrison has insulted France by tearing up that subs deal and signing another one with Britain and the US for nuclear subs instead, without giving France a fair warning.
What we did was clumsy. It was not done with a lot of grace. I was under the impression that France had been informed long before that the deal was not going through. I, honest to God, did not know you had not been.
That Joe Biden, what a weak backstabber he is. But why would you trust him? He's just throwing Australia under a bus to make things easy with him with France. You know, oh, not my fault, blame the Aussies. But really, who could trust Biden anyway to remember anything about how that US deal with Australia went down when he couldn't even remember Morrison's name when announcing it?
I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it, Mr. Prime Minister.
Now, I think Morrison's critics should explain how he could have handled the fallout with France better. What's their advice? Because I'm struggling to see how he could have. I mean, France was always going to be furious, and Macron wasn't returning Morrison's phone calls. Let me tell you why France was always going to be furious and why Macron is just as likely to be the real liar here. You know what Macron's doing? By smashing Morrison again and again in public, refusing at first to take his calls, accusing him of betrayal, being untrustworthy, needing to repair the relationship, and now of lying. It's because Macron wants to be the big man in Europe, now that German Chancellor Angela Merkel is going. And what's more, he faces an election next year. And his two big rivals are on the right, and the even more right, Marine Le Pen and an ultra-nationalist journalist who's come from nowhere, Eric Zemmour. The French Donald Trump, he likes to say, and both of them are going to attack Macron as weak, not the man to lead a strong France at all. And then, you know, poor old Macron, here comes Pipsqueak Australia and rips up a contract with Macron, rips it right in his face and says France's subs are duds, which they are. So how did you think Macron was going to react? Even if Morrison's absolutely right that they are dud subs. Now, if you think my theory is far-fetched, believe me, Macron is reacting just as hysterically now with Britain. By the way, another English-speaking country. We know what the French think of them. Britain dared to leave the European Union, just when Macron was going to be the big boss. And now Macron is saying Britain had better give it fishing licenses to fish off British islands, or there will be reprisals. That's how he's talking now to everyone, it seems. And his Prime Minister has written to the rest of the European Union demanding it back France against Britain, claiming it was indispensable to show European public opinion that it causes more damage to leave the EU, which Britain did, than to stay in. So that's how Macron is working right now. Election coming, he's hysterical, wants to be the little Napoleon throwing his weight around to show French voters of the right that they can trust him to be a real French leader, smacking down countries like Australia. All right, Labour now wants to be on France's side. Journalists want to believe that Macron is a good guy and Morrison the klutz. They all got agendas. They all want Morrison to fail. But you now know the background. This scandal that Morrison lied smells to me like just more fake news. Until we see the evidence, I treat Macron as the clown here, the arrogant posturer. We're Australians. In a dispute with the French president, I am not going to assume without any evidence that we were in the wrong and we should crawl.